Welcome to the deep dive. So today we've got some really interesting sources lined up. They kind of dig into the hidden drivers behind our decisions. Specifically, we're focusing on these psychological biases, the ones that really trip us up, especially when things get serious, like in a negotiation or even just for planning your weekend. Today's big topic, the sunk cost fallacy. You could argue it's like the most famous, maybe the most expensive mental trap out there. Some of our sources, for those listening internationally, call it the bias of coût irrécupérable. Basically, costs you just can't get back. Our mission really is to figure out why we keep pouring time, energy, money into stuff that's clearly failing, just because we already started. Okay, let's unpack this.
It's a huge issue. It goes way beyond just, personal budgets. It lands squarely in big strategy territory, too. The sunk cost fallacy, well, fundamentally, it's a breakdown in rational thinking. It happens when we let resources we've already spent, time, money, whatever, influence our decisions about what to do next. And what's fascinating here, economically speaking, those past costs, totally irrelevant to the future, but psychologically, they become the main thing driving the bus. This whole idea was really pinned down in behavioral psychology back in 1985. Hal Arkes and Blumer did this foundational work. Their studies gave us the solid proof that what we've spent in the past dictates our future actions, often leading to pretty bad choices.
Right, and they kicked it off with this really neat, almost annoyingly simple experiment. It perfectly shows that clash between making a logical choice and being sort of emotionally trapped.
Yeah.
Arkes and Blumer gave people this hypothetical situation. Picture this. You've accidentally booked 2 ski trips, non-refundable, for the exact same weekend. The money's gone either way.
Exactly. So 2 commitments. Trip A, let's say, is to Michigan. Cost you $100. Trip B is to Wisconsin. That one only costs $50. And crucially, they told the participants that the Wisconsin trip, the cheaper one, was actually going to be more enjoyable.
Okay, so both are paid for, can't get the money back. They're sunk costs.
By definition.
So the rational thing to do seems obvious, right? You pick the trip that gives you the best future outcome, the most fun. That's trip B, Wisconsin. The fact you dropped $100 on Michigan versus $50 on Wisconsin, well, it shouldn't matter anymore. Financially speaking, that money's history.
That is the cold, hard logic, yes. But what they found was roughly half of the participants chose the Michigan trip, the $100 one.
Half. Wow. Why? Just because it costs more?
Pretty much. The thinking seemed to be, well, if I go on the cheaper trip, I've wasted $100. But if I go on the expensive one, I've only wasted $50. It's this weird mental accounting.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's like that loss aversion thing we hear about. We hate the feeling of losing the bigger amount, the $100. So much so that we'd rather choose the option that actually makes us, well, less happy, the worse vacation, just to avoid admitting that bigger loss.
That's absolutely spot on. It shows we're more worried about justifying the past decision, that $100 spend, than we are about actually having a good time in the future. The bias traps them. Because facing up to the fact that the initial $100 might have been, a waste, that psychological sting is just too much for many people, that drive to avoid admitting a mistake is what makes this fallacy stick around.
Okay, so that first experiment, it's hypothetical. Great for showing the basic mechanism, the psychology at play. But Arkes and Blumer, they didn't just leave it there, did they? They wanted to see if this actually happens out in the wild, with real money changing hands.
Right. That's where it gets, I think, really telling. They move from hypotheticals to observing real-world behavior.
And they did this with theater tickets. Season tickets.
Exactly. They worked with a theater company and tracked attendance for people who bought season tickets. The core question was, does the price someone paid affect whether they actually bothered to show up to the plays? So they cleverly set it up so season tickets were sold at 3 different prices. Some paid full price, some got a small, $2 discount, and others got a bigger $7 discount.
Okay, so same seats, same plays, just different initial investment levels.
And the hunch, based on the ski trick study, was that the more someone paid up front, the more psychologically compelled they'd feel to actually use those tickets. And the data, it was crystal clear. They looked at attendance records for the first half of the season and found a straight line connection. People who paid the full whack, no discount, they attended significantly more shows than the people who got either the $2 or the $7 discount.
Wow. So it wasn't about how good the plays were or if people suddenly got busier. It was purely about the initial price paid. That higher price tag created this sort of irrational pressure to go. It's like proof our internal bookkeeper demands we balance the accounts, even if we don't actually want to go out that night.
Precisely. They felt this need to, you might say, amortize the cost psychologically to spread out the pain of that expense by forcing themselves to attend. The logical thing, deciding, do I feel like seeing a play tonight, got completely overruled by this internal voice saying, hey, I paid full price for this seat. I have to use it.
That's a really important point. The fallacy doesn't just make us waste money, it makes us waste time and can even lead to, well, less enjoyment, right? That person paying full price might be dragging themselves to a show they're not even excited about just to feel like they didn't waste the initial payment. They're settling a mental score.
Absolutely. And this points to something deeper going on, protecting our ego. When we keep throwing good money after bad or good time after bad, we're often protecting our view of ourselves as someone who makes good decisions. Walking away from that $100 ski trip or skipping the play you paid full price for feels like admitting the first decision was a mistake, and we really, really resist admitting that.
Okay, so let's bridge this.
Yeah.
What does all this mean when we step away from, $100 ski trips and into the really complex stuff? Big company strategies, high-stakes negotiations, where the sunk costs aren't just dollars, but maybe years of work, reputations, political capital.
Right. It scales up dramatically. It's easy advice to say just ignore the past when it's a small amount.
Yeah.
But what happens when walking away from a project means the CEO might lose their job? The calculation changes, or at least it feels like it does.
Yeah, the stakes get so much higher.
Exactly. And that's where this failure of logic becomes systemic, baked into organizations. You see it all the time. Companies funding these white elephant projects long after it's clear they're not working. Why? Because too much budget's been spent, too many careers are tied to it, too many positive press releases have gone out already. Think about huge corporate mergers that turn sour but keep getting resources poured in.
Or in a negotiation.
Yeah, in negotiations, this bias is why you see parties clinging desperately to a deal structure. Even when, say, the market conditions have totally changed and made it a bad deal, they just don't want to restart the whole process because they've already spent, 8 months hammering out the details. That time feels like a massive investment they need to protect, even though rationally, it's gone, it's sunk.
That really highlights the challenge, doesn't it? It's simple for an economist on the sidelines to say, hey, ignore past investments. But if I'm the manager who championed that huge, very visible project, walking away doesn't just feel like admitting a mistake. It looks like a massive career failure. That's a real future cost to my reputation. How does pure rationality compete with that?
You've absolutely nailed the core difficulty there. The pure logic of sunk cost only works if you can somehow separate the decision from your own ego from the political fallout. And let's be honest, humans aren't great at doing that.
Right.
So the practical answer isn't just telling people to be rational. It's about building in structural safeguards.
Structural safeguards. Like what?
Well, one really effective tactic that's come out of this line of research is creating what you might call decision firewalls within an organization. The basic idea is the person or the team that originally greenlit the investment, they should not be the ones making the call on whether to continue funding it down the line.
Oh, okay. Bring in fresh eyes.
Exactly. You need someone new, maybe an external consultant or a manager reassigned who can look at it cold. Treat it like a brand new decision. Based on where we are today, what are the costs and benefits going forward? Ignore the history.
I like that. A clean slate decision maker. Kind of takes the ego out of the equation or at least moves it aside. Are there other, maybe preemptive tactics? Ways to fight this before it even starts?
Yes, definitely. Another powerful tool is using premortems. Or, more simply, setting really clear objective exit criteria before you even start. Before spending the first dollar, you agree as a team. If we don't hit X specific metric by Y date, the project automatically goes into review or is even terminated. No arguments, just a little more time.
Right, so you set the rational rule before the emotional attachment kicks in, before the costs start to feel heavy.
Precisely. It establishes that forward-looking decision role when everyone's still objective before the sunk costs start whispering in your ear.
That whole framing, using objective, future-focused criteria that you decided on before the investment, started to feel like a burden that really seems like the key takeaway from Arkes and Blumer's work, doesn't it? Applied to just about any big decision in life. It helps make it clear that when we think we're trying to recoup value from a past investment, we're often just, digging the hole deeper.
Yeah.
Compounding a bad decision.
Indeed. We've seen pretty clearly today how that past investment, that sunk cost, it really messes with our ability to make clear-headed decisions about the future. It's driven by these deep-seated things, wanting to avoid feeling lost, wanting to protect our ego, not wanting to admit we messed up.
So the critical skill we need to cultivate is learning to just accept that feeling of loss earlier, to cut bait sooner, rather than dragging it out and making things worse.
That's a huge part of it. Learning to cut your losses based on future potential, not past spending. And if that is the critical skill, deciding based purely on the future, it brings up a really important question for you, the listener, to think about as we wrap this up. Think about your own long term commitments, maybe a job, a project, even a relationship, or a personal goal. How much of your own identity, your reputation, maybe your emotional energy is tied up in something that, if you're honest, isn't really performing well right now? Try using that firewall idea on yourself. Imagine someone completely new with no history just took over your life today. Looking only at the future potential, would they continue pouring energy into that specific commitment? Or would they look at it fresh and decide, you know what, time to cut the losses here? Use that kind of detached perspective. It might help you evaluate your next move
Hmm.
based purely on where you want to go, not where you've already been.